Imagine if I put 3 main characters in front of you, one that was super nice, sweet, wholesome, one that was capable of intensity and anger, maybe even violence, and also one that was capable of being funny, but serious and handles social commentary well in a palpable way for kids. Which protagonist would you like? Which protagonist would you want to see more of? Which protagonist do you naturally gravitate towards when you see a new show? Well, regardless of what you picked, what if I told you that I know of a character that can do all of that and more? Her name is Molly McGee. I finished watching the first season of the Ghost and Molly McGee, and if the upcoming second season is anything like the first, I don't feel the need to wait to call it a classic. I remember watching Arcane or Spider-Verse, and I knew right then, after I finished watching it, that I was watching something special. In the sphere of funny, slightly wholesome episodic shows, this is probably one of the best first seasons that I've seen in the last 5 years, and a large part of that comes from the main character.
A lifetime diet of animated films has taught me that as long as I believe in myself, I can do anything!
What makes Molly McGee one of my favorite characters? Well, as I watch a lot of shows on nowadays, there's a trend in a certain archetype of a character. The type that wants to volunteer and everything, make the world a better place, not be able to deliver any kind of bad news, is naive to the point of manipulation, stands up for their friends, can't process or handle anger or sadness in any way, can't focus on the task at hand but somehow is endearing, incredibly impulsive, has a very quirky, maybe even charismatic way of speaking to everyone, but overall is just an optimistic ray of sunshine who fights for good to the point of fault. As you can see, this archetype more or less fits a lot of main characters, and the reason why is because it's very easy to work with this type of character. It works for shows that's made for kids, as a built-in role model that parents can enjoy. Networks push heavily on it, and episodes can be written if morality is at the forefront of its writing. What I often find though is that I don't really care about that character as much as the characters around because they're often too stale in execution. Why choose vanilla when you have the Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors written within each of these shows? While Molly fits within this archetype and even exhibits some of the faults of writing of this archetype, this show has done something with their character that I would love to see more of in Disney shows. They didn't protect her.
Okay, come on, Toads. Into the arena, buddy. Let's go. Time to go. Oh.
Molly gets challenged a lot within this show. Her morals get twisted against her by Scratch, her ghoulish best friend, who is cursed to be by her side. She often has to juggle the incompetency or malice of her family members, friends, or the citizens of Brighton. Molly also has to live with the secret of befriending a ghost for their own good. She also isn't opposed to being physically thrown through the ringer.
This has been the best day of my life. Thanks for donating your good luck, Molly.
Yeah, I'm happy for you, Libby. But now I understand why you hate Friday the 13th.
Throughout this, she still remains a character to see the bright side and value teamwork, friendship, and optimism over giving up and letting fear and evil dominate her forever home. This leads into a lot of wholesome moments. The show focuses a lot of its time on family matters with a strong Thai representation. It didn't feel alienating at all despite not being the person represented on screen. Now if only we can get people to see that with Turning Red, but I digress. Molly is joined by her chaotic, troublemaking brother Daryl, who while impulsive is incredibly entertaining to watch, and her slightly cowardly but lovable father whose timid personality was challenged within this season and it won me over, and strong, scary but sweet mother who provided a lot of laughs but also a lot of heavy emotional moments within the show. With an amazing cast of characters and a good plot, this is one of my favorite examples of modern serialized shows done right.
I worked hard so you could follow your dream. You are talented, Tirak. You always have been. So stop selling pork and get back to your art. Oh, Mom.
I've noticed a trend within modern animation. Do you like Jellystone? Have you watched the latest episode of Middlemost Post? How about We Baby Bears? Did you go back and watch all of Big City Greens? Maybe you just finished watching Captain Underpants. Or maybe you got back into SpongeBob again because of its cinematic universe. I'm sure you also watched Tig and Seek, The Fungies, and Ollie's Pack, and of course you didn't. I'm speaking about a bunch of shows that are probably good in their own right, and outside of SpongeBob, these shows could have been a lot bigger and a lot more successful with support. But I don't often hear about the success of animated shows that feature a bunch of episodes that are just within a vacuum. There are exceptions. Craig of the Creek is Cartoon Network's biggest show and has episodes within a vacuum. Gumball did very well for itself for most of the few first seasons being episodes in a vacuum, but generally it is the show that leads you somewhere that tends to get spoken about more. Does that mean that we have to throw the serialized format in the trash? No.
Moonlight we call, we sing. Moonlight take this chance. Moonlight can tie the string.
And I don't know the words.
This episode, for example, Hootie's Moving Hassle, does not need the prior episodes in order to understand the plot or the characters' relationships, but one would be enhanced by knowing what happened before this episode. Now, why would I bring this up? This is an example of a show, a popular show, with a heavy plot, but episodes that work in a vacuum without knowing what that grand arc is. And I think that approach right there, this season of Molly McGee, did that perfectly. Right at the end of the first episode, we are shown that Scratch occupies a home in Brighton for the purpose of keeping the small town miserable. Molly, as I stated, is the archetype that wants to make the world a better place. In fact, her goal in the season was to, quote, "inhappify Brighton." Despite being cursed to be around each other, it was even worse that their goals directly contradict each other. Someone had to give, and predictably, it was Scratch. Over this season, we get good episodes such as First Day Frights, Not So Honest Abe, and Home is Where the Haunt Is, where Scratch is forced to confront his friendship with Molly to increasingly wholesome levels, to the point where towards the end of the season, it isn't even a debate anymore from them. However, through love, appreciation, and food that he receives from the McGee family, he'd also neglect his duties of making Brighton miserable. This leads into his scar reports, not scare as he spells it wrong, being worse as the season goes on. In the meantime, we get some development on Molly's end with some amazing recurring characters.
I see no fountain of ranch.
Molly! Oh, thanks for coming to synagogue. Okay, how was I? Did I look too nervous? Did I look like a woman?
Oh yeah, you rocked that Torah portion. I didn't understand any of it, to be honest, but you were great. So when's everyone else coming here?
Everyone is here.
This is Libby, and this is one of my favorite episodes of the season, Mazel Tov, Libby, and I hope to get around to that soon. It revolves around Libby's bat mitzvah and her introverted personality clashing with Molly's extroverted personality. Molly assumes that a great party has to have a lot of guests, loud noises, pizzazz, when all Libby wanted was to invite her best friend and have fun with her specifically. Libby might be one of my favorite introverted characters in a long time, and this was perfect as an example of what some introverts might go through, while also having some neat Jewish representation.
Recycling is the first step to saving the earth. It's hard work, but someone had to do it. I love you. Bye.
This is Andrea, not Andrea, Andrea, who started off with a rough first impression with Molly due to the pronunciation of her name. She is often as charismatic as Molly, but has a large amount of pride with an even larger social presence, which feeds into her own ego. She's not unbearable as a character, however, a lot of that comes from not protecting her either. She often gets the bad end of the stick, like in the episode Hooray for Mollywood, where after slowly ruining Molly's horror movie by making it more or less a sponsorship for her, she still gets to be in a movie, but probably not in the way that she intended. Her best episode, in my opinion, would have to be the Don't Gooder, an episode where Molly and Andrea battle for who's more charitable via selling nougat bars to raise funds for a new school marquee. We'd learn that she'd fake being a great saleswoman by simply buying all of her bars and making it appear that she's selling and giving to the community, but is only doing so for the approval of her parents who show that they don't really give her that much attention or guidance. It's a fantastic episode.
Hey, Fondrias! We're doing a big charity event today, saving my best best friend, Molly McGee.
Sorry, you're what?
Yeah, what?
Despite claiming to be Molly's best friend later in the season, I do want to say that I don't really care for the ship of these characters. I actually enjoy that Molly for the most part has been platonic. I'd imagine for the relationship to work, Andrea would either have to be watered down to be palpable for the dynamic to be there, or Molly would have to go against a lot of her own morals to think that it would work with Andrea as she is now. Only if you look at these characters at a surface level and aesthetically would it even look like a good ship. And given that animation is a lot more than just a look, I don't ship it.
The living belong with the living, and the dead belong with the dead. You can't be friends. It's unnatural and against the ghost code. Say goodbye, Scratch, because you're gonna spend eternity in the flow of failed phantoms.
However, let's get back to the main plot at hand. I would love to speak about this episode, The Jig is Up, and so much more, but I enjoyed that ticking clock that was present throughout the season. Every so often, the Ghost Council will either pull Scratch away from the overworld to speak about Scratch's performance, or we would see the joy meter slowly ticking towards joy and away from fear. We'd also get an explanation as to why Scratch needs to cause misery in the first place, and while I don't want to spoil that reason here, I did find that to be a neat dilemma. I think the pressure put on Scratch not only helped develop his heart of gold, but also led into a fantastic season finale that I can't wait to speak about soon. And the best part about it is that this is only a microcosm of my feelings towards the show. Consider this to just be the announcement that I would love to cover as much of the first season as I can before the second season comes out, which is confirmed. Until then, check out my verses that I did with Molly McGee and Fairly Odd Parents, and until next time, take care. Alpha out.